All right, I guess we can get started. Usually we wait a couple minutes, but we almost have 200 people in here um, and very active in chat. So I will give a quick intro. My name's Emily Hughes. I am the head of marketing at Mobilize. We've already gotten questions if we're going to send out this recording or the deck afterwards. We will. You'll receive it by tonight. We also will send out a couple resources. They're also listed at the end of this presentation from all three of our panelists. If you have questions throughout, use the Q&A feature. I will try to answer some in real time as our speakers are presenting. Otherwise, I will ask them live on your behalf at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt from Mobilize.
Hey everybody, hope everyone is doing great today. I always love to do this because I'm a former organizer and some people hate it, but if you're comfortable doing so, we would just love to know where everybody is in the country today. So there's a ton of people on. So if you can, in the chat, just drop where you're dialing in from in the country. I'll skip that part because I'm in DC and I've got to run slides, but excited to communicate with everybody about how to host a successful phone bank. And I just want to start off by saying we're so grateful for you all joining, but especially grateful for our friends at NGP Van and the MJ Hagar for Texas campaign for joining us today. So we're going to learn a lot of good stuff. Cool. So let's kick it off. So rough agenda. We're going to do quick introductions. Second, third, and fourth are going to be our top 3 tips for how to host a successful phone bank, especially right now. We'll end up with a little bit of Q&A and some resources at the end, but hopefully we will all leave with some better understanding and maybe a little bit of time left in our day. Cool. So quick update. This is me. I'm the senior partner, the senior manager of strategic partnerships at Mobilize. This is on the left, me on the speaker's balcony here in DC, and on the right in Animal Crossing last night. If you want my dodo codes, we can talk about that afterwards. Cool. So a little bit about Mobilize. At Mobilize, we are laser focused on helping you drive more action more easily to achieve your mission. We do that a few ways, but the main 3 things that we want to do is help you recruit supporters more easily, increase your supporter engagement, and do it more consistently through turbocharging that through our network. So you can see some screenshots of what our product looks like. Most of you on the call probably know us, but we are really excited to have you. So we were built to help maximize action for you. You can see these nice numbers and statistics on the bottom. This is the typical flow of a supporter journey and kind of how Mobilize frames up and thinks about the ladders of engagement, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. But this is a good overview of exactly how we do it, from discovery to sign up to asking them to bring friends, helping you drive donations to when the check-in process happens. We also automate the feedback and re-engagement. And then hopefully your volunteers will be creating their own events as well. So that's a little bit about us. And Ashley, I think you are next, so I'll hand it over to you and just tell me when you want me to advance to the next slide.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Wilson, Director of State and Local Political Campaigns at NGP Van. There's a picture of my son and my 2 doggies who are driving me absolutely crazy lately. So anyone with kids and or pets, I'm sure you can understand all of that. You can go over to the next slide. So this is just a very quick overview of NGP's tools. So of course we have BAN with the voter data and turf cutting when we were able to do that kind of thing, and Minivan, volunteer management, and also we have our NGP 8 and Digital 8 tools. Those are really geared towards fundraising and compliance. And so, if you are interested in all that, definitely can let us know. But I know a lot of folks are probably familiar with VAN and the voter data and those phone banking tools. Go to the next slide. And so since we were talking about phone banks and phone banking, wanted to just kind of pinpoint on 2 of our tools, Virtual Phone Bank and Open Virtual Phone Bank. those are featured tools that are already available on your van if you have van access. And this is a way for you to build out your list. And instead of printing out list, you can have it all available for your phone bankers right on Van or on Open Virtual Phone Bank. All they need is an action ID. And so that way you don't have to actually log into Van, but actually just go onto a website, and then the list will be there. They'll be able to save all the information from those phone banks right into to either like platform that they're using. And the next one, you could go to the next slide, Matt, is Predictive Dialer. Predictive Dialer is actually an add-on phone service. So this is actually a quicker way for your phone bankers to go through the list, and it dials for them. And it connects the volunteer or phone banker to the supporter when they pick up the phone. So as soon as someone picks up, that's when you're able to actually start talking to them, and then it hangs up for them, but you're able to save everything right from the Predictive Dialer platform and go from there.
We stand the Predictive Dialer.
What's that?
Said we stand the Predictive Dialer.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cool.
It just makes it so much quicker. Instead of trying to dial each time, you're just able to just go through, and it just connects you as soon as someone is available. So it just saves so much time and money using those.
Awesome. Cool. And next up, would love to hear from Hester.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hester, and I'm MJ Hagar's Mobilization Director. MJ is running for the US Senate here in Texas. She is running, we're still in the runoff phase of our campaign right now, but we are ramping up so that we can defeat John Cornyn once and for all in November. We have been doing a lot of work, phone banking, texting, reaching out to folks in the community right now during obviously this pandemic. So really excited to get to chat with everybody today and share some of the stuff we've been doing. I do not have a pet, so instead of sharing a picture of my pet, I thought I'd share this fun photo of MJ herself as a school mascot for the Leander Lions, where she went to high school, instead of sharing a pet picture. So there's a little fun pic of MJ in high school. Don't tell her I shared this with you guys. But thrilled to be here, so thanks so much.
Awesome. Love that. Cool. So let's talk about our first top 3 thing that we think contributes to a successful phone bank. We're going to talk about 2 parts of this first one. It's recruiting and training. My colleague Ashley is going to talk about the importance of training, but I want to talk about recruitment. It's obviously so important to get people to show up to your phone bank so they can actually do the phone banking, especially now, right? It's hard to get people to actually do that. And obviously Mobilize tools are a big way to do that, and GP Van's set of tools can help with that as well. But we want to make sure that you can get those sign-up pages anywhere and everywhere. So you may be doing recruitment via P2P texting, via phone banking actually to do recruitment, but highly encourage you to recruit anybody and everybody to do phone banking. My family ignores my text messages these days because I'm always asking them to do something for a candidate or a cause. So always be shifting. We want you to be able to put those links to the sign up pages anywhere and everywhere, whether it be online or offline. So that is definitely so important. Always have an ask for people in terms of doing something for you. And then the ladders of engagement, right? So the first step is recruiting them. And through Mobilize, obviously, it's really easy to get people to sign up, and NGP helps you do that as well. And then once they do sign up, we want to be able to get them to the next step, right? Which is not just attending. So, Mobilize is going to confirm that on your behalf. An organizer may do that for you, just making sure those people get there. And once they're there, we want to make sure that they're trained up and ready to go. Ashley?
Yeah, definitely. So, one thing I have found when you have phone bankers, especially if it's a first time one, there's a lot of nerves. People are definitely scared about getting on the phone and how, to answer questions and what to do. So definitely take the time out to train folks. It won't take too much of your time, or it's actually it's worth it to take the time, I should say, to really train folks, because now they're more confident on the phones. They know what to do when someone goes, maybe ask a question that's off script, what to expect when someone is, maybe a little hostile or just whatever the case is. But training folks is really important. And again, taking the time out to train them will be helpful, because once you're ready to, get a new batch of volunteers, they can now train them. And so I think it's really important to take the time out to go through what to expect, what the script looks like, how to record information as you're talking to folks so people know where to exactly put that information so that the campaign can use that information later. But definitely this is a way for folks not to get discouraged, and just to build their confidence as they're talking to folks. Hester, have you found that to be helpful too?
Yeah, couldn't agree more that taking the time to train people is super important to having a successful phone bank. We've been doing a couple different versions of trainings. We have like a toolkit. When somebody signs up on our Mobilize phone banking event, they get sent a link straight away that lets people preview the script, has some different phone banking tips, kind of gets people in the mood that they can review on their own time. We found that people are signing up at really weird times these days. They kind of see something online and they want to take action straight away. So we want to give people the opportunity to be trained straight away as well. But we've been doing as well is hosting an organizing boot camp, which has been a 6-week program. We just finished it last week, training people on all different aspects of organizing. And we found it's really helpful to kind of put people through a program like this so that they know the bigger context to why we're making these calls. It's not just because we want to have, obviously getting the data from the conversations is super important, but kind of realizing that it's part of a bigger picture of building relationships with people, reaching out to the people in your community. And so we've been really excited to do this. This was, as I said, it was a 6-week thing. Each week had a different topic, but then by the time those people actually started making calls, they were really, really confident. They were able to speak about the campaign's messaging, and they were able to kind of, once they're having those conversations, make the hard ask to people, and as Ashley was just saying, train other volunteers to do it as well. We found this has been really effective for us, getting folks from all across Texas involved with our campaign, and having that kind of sustained engagement of coming back week after week. And really, again, providing like, why is phone banking so important in the bigger picture of the campaign? How is it helping us win? How is it helping us build out our grassroots army of volunteers? So would definitely recommend investing in kind of coming up with your own versions of a program like this to really train people, not just on the specific tech tools that you're using, but giving a bigger picture for people as well. So all for team training, definitely recommend putting the time in, because it's definitely worth it to make your volunteers empowered and to be able to kind of take more ownership of the program.
Awesome. Okay, on to number 2. Ashley is going to walk us through making it fun, our second tip on how to host a super great fan bank.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess before all of this started, in terms of like COVID, one way to make it fun was always, bring lots of food and have everyone around. But now things have definitely changed since we're not doing any of this in person. And so we just have to find ways to keep people excited, engaged, encouraged to keep going and doing these phone banks. So a couple of ways to make it fun. I was thinking maybe, make it a game, right? How many people can recruit the most volunteers or identify the most supporters, or who has the best voter contact? And whoever wins gets a t-shirt, a bumper sticker, a yard sign, something. But just making it fun and making it a game, I think, is super helpful. And of course, one way of doing that is if you're doing it like through a Zoom meeting, right? So everyone's on Zoom, making the calls together at a certain time. While they're on the phone with someone, just mute it, and then they can hop back on to talk to other volunteers until they actually connect with someone. So this is just a way to keep everyone engaged, feeling together, since they can't be at a campaign office doing it all together. Another thing I found, which was helpful when we were doing these things in person, was always like invite a special guest, right? So have someone stop by to say hello, to encourage everyone, thank them for taking the time out to do this, explain why it's so important. So having that special guest. And I think it's even easier now to do, since all they have to do is just jump on a Zoom meeting and talk to folks. So again, we used to, when I was doing phone banks 2016, it would be like, local elected official would stop by to talk through and help folks. And so I always think like having a special guest would be is a nice way to make it fun. And also have the candidate participate too. So if the candidate can get on the Zoom meeting, just for like 10-20 minutes to make calls too, I think volunteers would really appreciate that, to see the candidate taking time out to do this, and then just giving the volunteer space time with the candidate too. So I think these are ways to make it fun right now. Like, again, it is an interesting time, so you have to find different ways to go about it. Hester, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's what we've been trying to do as well. Here's a screenshot of one of our like Zoom parties that we've done while taking action. I think it's really fun for people to get to see who all the other volunteers are. And it's actually been nice for us to get people from across Texas getting to meet on events like this. Typically, obviously in a field office, it would be the folks just in your neighborhood who are coming in. But this way we've got people from all over Texas. So we try and have Zooms going on, having people introduce themselves, obviously muting once they're actually on a phone call, and then sharing some of the best calls that they've had with the group. I think it's been really motivating for people. A lot of the calls that we're doing right now are kind of more community check-in calls, kind of seeing how people are doing. And we've heard some really heartwarming stories from that of, talking to essential workers who are sharing with our volunteers what they're going through. So I think that's really motivating for people to keep them engaged. We've also been trying to do like volunteer leaderboards and stuff, either if everybody's on at the same time, seeing who can make the most calls during that time, who can get, if you're recruiting for shifts, who can recruit the most shifts. And then if you want to have like a phone banking like MVP, the person who like had the best story to tell or got the most volunteers recruited or, spoke to the most number of people, I think that's helpful to keep folks engaged. We've also kind of done some things like this here on the right, like a virtual weekend of action, kind of making people feel like it's all happening at the same time, and like sharing stories on social media as well to kind of, keep everybody encouraged and keep them going. But I think the main thing is just like, as Ashley was saying, getting people, making them feel like it's happening together. Even if you're not able to do a Zoom, maybe having a Facebook group or a Slack. We kind of call our Slack our virtual campaign office, and we're always in there answering people's questions, giving them that live support, but also celebrating when someone has a really good phone call, kind of giving them some love and hyping them up to be like, great work, let's keep going. And that's also useful if you're like, okay, we're halfway through today's list. If everybody can stay on for another 30 minutes, I'm sure we're going to crush the rest of it. Can kind of keep folks motivated.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least in our list of top 3 things that we encourage you to do for a successful phone bank, especially right now, is to be scrappy and creative. I think this is a somewhat of a cliche, but it is really true, right? In campaign world and politics and organizing of any kind, you have to be creative and resourceful, using what you have in your hands to really meet the moment. One way that we've seen this be really successful right now, and Hester is just going to go into it a little bit for us in a second, is targeting and compassion. I have always really valued connections with campaigns that I've worked on before, with those leaders that really lead with compassion, whether they're the candidate, the campaign manager, the organizer, other volunteers, folks that are really leading with that vulnerability, especially right now. People want to connect on a human level, and we're actually seeing that they want to connect on that even more so than ever right now. And I think we actually have data to back that up here at Mobilize. We're seeing the virtual requests for virtual actions go through the roof. Almost 90% of every action on Mobilize right now. I think this weekend we had signups near 200,000 or something like that for several events. But meeting that moment with a really human touch is really important, and obviously targeting. Hester's going to go into a fantastic example of that in just a second. But really think about what is the message that you want to communicate and what is the best way to communicate it, whether that be making sure that you're talking to the right people. Obviously that's important, but even more so thinking about what do people need to hear right now and how can we make sure that they hear it. Hester, do you want to show us what you all have done?
Sure. So one of the things that we've done recently is actually kind of using Van in a different way. So instead of just doing an open VPB or a dialer, we've been actually using Minivan to make calls right now so that people can make calls specifically to the people in their neighborhood and actually kind of see where they are in a map. And instead of like going out and knocking on their door, obviously, we're just making phone calls to them, leaving voicemails, following up with a text, and seeing how they're doing. We found that it's really helpful to have the message come from somebody in their neighborhood. That way folks can kind of check in and be a lot more personal, like, hey, I'm just around the corner. Like, if you need groceries or anything like that, like, let me know. I'm here for you. I'm literally around the corner from your house. I'm here if you need me. We've been doing a lot of work. We have like a resource page on our website that we're encouraging our volunteers to like follow up via text. If they get through to somebody, asking if there's anything that we can be helpful with, and then sending them that link. One of the things Matt was talking about too is targeting, and as well as doing kind of specific neighborhood outreach, so letting people reach out to the people near them. We've been trying to get a little bit creative with the list that we're doing for our regular open VPBs statewide. Thinking about in Texas, vote by mail. Unfortunately, folks have to be over 65, disabled, or out of their county for election season in order to qualify for vote by mail. So if we're calling those people, if we want to encourage them to vote by mail, we're just doing lists of over 65 at the moment. Trying to think through, like, if somebody looks like they live in a household by themselves, maybe they are going to want to have a little bit more, maybe they'll have more time to talk on the phone, or maybe they'll kind of crave that human connection a little bit more. Whereas if we see there are a bunch of people in a family, maybe they have kids, maybe talking on the phone isn't going to be the best thing for them right now. So just trying to kind of think a little bit about who the people we're talking to, are they going to have time to speak on the phone? How likely are they going to be to pick up? And then once we get them, really, again, as Matt said, being compassionate. We're not really making that many asks right now, other than kind of checking with people, seeing how they're doing. Some of our volunteers who did organizing boot camp have been hosting virtual community events, which has been really fun, whether that's virtual cooking nights, game nights. Somebody did a Netflix party, a bunch of cool things like that. And they've been using these phone calls to also invite the people in the neighborhood to join them for just like a fun event like that. That then during that event, they can give a field pitch and try and get them to take action with us again, but really kind of lowering the bar of the ask and just connecting people with right now, giving them resources, giving them a chance to feel like they're part of a team during all the craziness that's going on, I think has been really useful for us. And again, trying to think of like, what tools do we have at our disposal? We wanted to think of how could we get people organizing in a state as big as Texas, it would be hard to pull a bunch of different neighborhood lists, but remembering, oh wait, with Minivan, people can see exactly, they get the like 40 doors closest to them. Could we just use phone calls instead? So trying to think about what you already have on board and reusing it right now to make it more, meeting this kind of weird moment that everybody's in.
Let's go back to the resources real quick, or was that after this, Matt?
I think it's actually after this. I clicked too much too soon.
So we have a ton of questions.
I've been scanning through them.
They're amazing questions. We had a lot of people asking if this will be made available. I will send out the recording today, I promise. And I'm glad that you are finding it valuable. So let's dive into some of these questions. Bear with me, as some of them I'm not sure exactly who they're for, so we may tag team them. Okay, we had a bunch of questions at the beginning about Predictive Dialer. One, is it an add-on or an upcharge to Van?
It is an add-on, and so if anyone is interested, I guess we'll figure out a way to funnel folks over to me, and I can point them in the right direction to our phone services folks, but it is an add-on to your Van. Virtual phone bank, VPB, and Open VPB is already included in your Van.
Okay, more questions about Predictive Dialer. Sorry to bombard you, Ashley, just so we keep them together. One, will it dial into a cell phone?
No, unless the person has opted in to receive calls. So if it's a phone number that so it's only going to dial through landlines, but if someone has opted in to receive calls, then it will go to a cell phone, but it won't go to cell phones unless it's opted in.
Okay. How many phone bankers do you need to use the Predictive Dialer?
I'll double check. I don't think there is a limit to like a minimum or max, but I could double check on that one for you.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me make sure I have that question and then we could follow up. But I don't think there is a minimum or max.
And just so everybody knows, the next slide is going to be a list of resources on from everybody here about what we're doing, how we're doing it, as well as how to get in touch with us afterwards. So if you have a question that needs follow-up, we will certainly do our best, but make sure you write down our emails and contact information and we'll follow up with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, this one was a long one. It's about phone validation. So Meryl said she did some research and found there was at least one phone validation company that can successfully identify when a number is disconnected or invalid. Running phone numbers in van through validation could dramatically make outreach more effective. Any thoughts on that?
That, I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I can double check on that question. Anything too specifically like technical about the predictive dialer, unfortunately, I would have to check with our phone services team.
Okay. Also from Meryl, and Matt, maybe you can jump in on this one. Would love to know how to create a phone bank and share with Mobilize, but also prevent trolls from getting into the phone bank and hassling voters.
Yeah. Great question. We do a lot of work at Mobilize in order to suppress what we call trolls, right? On the technical side, and I won't go into that because it's a lot of mumbo jumbo. But the long story short is we do our absolute best. But even still, there's no way to prevent trolls from getting through to your event. So one way that you can, there's a few ways you can go about this. From a Mobilize perspective, one thing we encourage people to do is if you're concerned about that, you can make sure that people, you use private events on Mobilize. So, making sure that you have something that only if you have the link to it, you can sign up for it. Another way to go about it is using Mobilize messaging, where you can directly message the attendees of your event. Only those who maybe have confirmed their attendance, etc. The Zoom link, etc. Shout out to Emily. Her and her team have written an amazing blog. I think it's the top 5 ways to prevent Zoom bombing or something like that. And that's actually on our COVID guide. And we'll give you a link to that shortly. So there's a lot of ways that we think about doing it. At the end of the day, the nice thing about tools like Zoom is usually you can kick people out if you have to, though. So just keep all that in mind. And remember, at the end of the day, you want to create an open, safe community for people. So there's plenty of tools available to you, both on Mobilize, and I'm sure NGP has a lot of great tools like that too.
I just want you to know, as we're answering questions, like 5 times more are coming in. So this is one of the most engaged audiences we've had.
Emily, can I just interrupt real quick? I wanted to check on the question about the minimum or maximum for the predictive dialer. So it's actually 10 minimum. So if you have about 10 people on the predictive dialer, that's what would make it best. Sorry about that. Just wanted to double check before.
Another question for you, Ashley. Is there a way to adjust the settings on your auto dialer so that they can turn off the auto part for slower, newer volunteers on the system?
I would have to double check on that. I'm sorry, guys. Pretty technical, more technical questions
that we are talking to.
Yes. But
we'll
whoever asked that
question,
and follow up.
Yeah.
Okay. From Nick, is there a detailed description of all the options for when you don't reach someone? Some are obvious, but other ones like busy could be taken a few different ways.
So like recording, like in terms of recording that info?
Yeah.
I think you can make the script so that way you can say like, okay, add additional notes. So it could say busy and then there's like a place where you could put additional notes. So if you wanted to find out like what the busyness was, but there is ways to record that.
All right, Hester, finally a couple of questions for you, and there are many more coming. One, I think you mentioned organizing boot camp.
Yeah.
We had a lot of interest for your reference to a ladder of engagement, to the email that you sent out for trainings, to this organizing boot camp. Is that something you would share with this audience?
Sure, you can actually sign up for MJ's bootcamp at mjfortexas.com/bootcamp. We've tried to make everything available to people. Although the program is now finished, we do have, the materials are still live and everything. So you're welcome to take part and have a look at what we've been doing.
And Hester's going back to one of our top 3 things, which is always be recruiting.
Especially Texas folks on this call would love for you to partake in it. Yeah.
That is the perfect segue into Colin's question, which was, have you seen any engagement from people outside of Texas?
So the bootcamp itself was for folks in Texas, because the point of it was to kind of get people trained to be hosting virtual events, connecting with people in their community, and kind of thinking about their networks in Texas so that we can be getting out the vote. We do have volunteers around the country who are helping us do things like texting and phone banking that you can do from anywhere. So definitely, if people are outside of Texas and they want to help us defeat John Cornyn and get the vote out for MJ, you can sign up on our Mobilize page for virtual events. Feel free anytime. But the bootcamp specifically was focused on people in Texas, because those people are ultimately going to be our volunteer leaders who are doing more things on the ground and more locally.
Great. We had some questions about gamifying the system and making it fun. Do you have any concerns that gamification could hurt the accuracy of the data you're getting?
I think on our campaign, we try and think about like which points we're going to make be a game. If it was just like the number of calls, like theoretically that could incentivize people like not having good quality conversations. So for example, if we're trying to do volunteer recruitment, making the number that we're recording be how many shifts did they get signed up, and that's something that you can like check in the back end of Van. I think at the end of the day, like if you spend the time training and you trust your volunteers, it's not something that I am like too concerned about at the end of the day. We really want to empower people to take action and make it fun. If somebody's going through the motions to like make calls for you and they don't want to tell you the exact accurate number, the important thing to me is that people are making calls and they're doing it well. So I'm not too worried about it. But I think kind of picking the data points that you want to make the most out of. I know for some people who use Dialer, I'm not sure about Van's Dialer, but the Dialer that we use, you can see how many minutes was somebody active versus just like on the screen and not doing anything. So for that thing, we would try and prioritize how many minutes were you active and actually speaking to somebody rather than just kind of sitting there on the Dialer not doing anything.
Yep. I was going to say exactly the same thing. One of the thought I had was making training part of the gamification. So in other words, in order to qualify for any rewards or gamification, you had to go through the training, which would help be a good stopgap there too.
Great.
I love that.
Couple questions about how to participate in a Zoom call while using a VPB at the same time with voter info and a script on the screen.
One of the things we've done is try and kind of have like the most of the interactive parts of Zoom be at the beginning. So like letting people do role play, introducing themselves, and then just kind of muting everybody and allowing people to unmute if they have a question or put something in the chat box, and then kind of wrapping up the phone banking session at the end with another kind of more interactive moment on Zoom. We have had people who, kind of talk more throughout it, as long as you are just kind of like, if you're there in the participant section, like muting people if they're speaking to somebody on the phone. I think it's just kind of being a bit of a Zoom master and making sure that you're ready to mute somebody if you need to. I think one of the things I've tried to do too is if people have access to printers, like telling them to print out the script, have it in front of them, or just like be making notes on paper so that sometimes they're looking at the screen, but for other stuff, they have it physically in front of them, I think is helpful too, so that they're not trying to move back and forth between a bunch of tabs.
Great. We are now moving into the questions about minivan. There are many. Okay. When you make calls by minivan, what is the preparation for the lists? Is that by using walk list numbers, or is there a way to do that by call lists? Which is better for inputting new info?
I can talk about how our team is doing it, but I imagine Ashley might have some better ideas from the van side of things. We've just been making a statewide list. Once you make your search in van, instead of pushing it to a phone list, you can push it to be a minivan list. We then just have one statewide list with the same list number that people can then enter. That's one of the reasons we decided to do it, because then everybody in Texas can have the same thing. We have then set it so that it gets counted as a relational phone call instead of a like door knock, so that the data comes back knowing that it was through this like kind of hack of minivan making calls. But if you have minivan, if you set up the format for your script and everything, it's relatively straightforward to then just push it to be a minivan list rather than a phone banking list.
Yep, that's exactly right, Hester. So it is just pushing that list instead of pushing it to make calls, but pushing it to minivan. And I know there were some questions on the, I guess, the chat asking about how you get minivan. If you have van access, you get you have minivan. So it's already included. It's just a matter of setting up your list and sending it to minivan versus like making it like a call list or walk list. And then just uploading the app on your phone. So then you could be able to pull the list on your phone.
Matt, we had a similar question about Mobilize. How would a campaign sign up for Mobilize and what is the cost?
Absolutely, it's a great question. Anybody can get signed up for Mobilize if you're a campaign. Unfortunately, we can't give it away for free because that would be a violation of campaign finance law, but you can sign up. The cost varies depending on what level of office you're running from, the size of your district. The way that we are priced, because we want to help you accomplish your mission, is based on the complexity of the campaign you're running, but also the scale. So the folks that have more tend to pay more, and it's a very fair scale in that way. So my email will be on one of these slides. I'm happy to run through a demo and get you a quote, but just so you know, it's Matt, M-A-T-T, at mobilize.us.
Great. Some of these questions are repeats, so I'm just digging through it. We answered that. What is the difference between VPB and Open VPB?
Sure. So virtual phone bank is if you're creating a list and the volunteer or whoever is using it through van. Open VPB, you don't actually need a van access to get access to the list. So basically you would just get sent a URL, you put in your action ID, and then you get the list. And as you're putting everything in, it's all going back into the campaigns van. So this is going to be for your phone bankers. Then again, you don't want to print out the list, but you don't want them to have access to the van, or they don't have access to the van. So then you just send them the Open VPB link.
And for Open VPB, is the same restriction on calling cell phones true?
Well, it's just you're building out your list, so you're just you can't call through cell phones, I believe.
Got it. And how different are these tools from ThruTalk?
ThruTalk, oh, sorry. Sorry guys, I kept going back and forth. ThruTalk is your text messaging program, correct? Right? Like, and this is only for making your calls. So this is just a list that you can make your calls.
Got it. We have a couple more troll questions, but they're not related to Zoom and Mobilize. So if you have an unknown user on your VPB, how can you find out if it is a troll? Is there a way to monitor volunteers as they call, both to find trolls and to coach them? Not the trolls, the volunteers.
Wait, repeat that one more time, sorry.
If they have an unknown user on VPB, how can they find out if it is a troll? Can they monitor volunteers as they call, both to find trolls and to coach volunteers?
So this is asking like if you can monitor who's on your VPB?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you have to create like an action ID and everything to get into it. So I think that's your way of monitoring who's getting into it. And then the second part is training. The other part of the question.
Yep, to kind of actively coach volunteers while they were making calls.
Training them to make the calls on VPB. I'm sorry, I'm completely okay. So this is just, I mean, that would just be, going through your training process and going through the process of here's how you go through VPB or Open VPB and walking through them. Like that's just going to be part of your training process, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Which has a higher success rate, phone banking or text banking? Hester, what do you think?
I think it depends on the ask. I think, you know, texting is all about reaching people at scale. You can do it very, very quickly. Even if people don't reply, at least they've read the text potentially. But I think if you're actually trying to like walk somebody through the ladder of engagement, getting them to commit to a shift, getting them to commit to volunteer, I think phone is a lot better for that. I think you're going to have more effective and more persuasive conversations over the phone. Just, you know, sometimes people are pretty mean over text. They don't kind of realize even sometimes that you're a real person having a real conversation. But when you're listening to somebody, you're engaging with them. I think that's a more effective way to kind of like bring people on the team and get them to commit to doing higher bar asks. I do think texting is really, really useful, both for kind of getting name ID up, also good for things like confirms that maybe you don't have as much time to individually call everybody, but you want to put a list up that's like, hey, want to make sure you have the, you know, the Zoom link for later, here it is, things like that, I think is really helpful. So just kind of depends, do you want quantity or do you want quality for the ask that you're making?
And Hester, this may be particular to your campaign, but we're getting questions about the best time of day to make calls.
Oh, I mean, obviously that's kind of different right now because a lot more people are at home all the time. We are still doing the majority of our phone banks in the evening. And then texting we kind of do throughout the day. We found it doesn't matter as much for texting about times, but still we're doing phone calls in the evenings. That being said, if you are doing a list of potentially older voters, that might not matter as much. If you want to do like an early afternoon, typically people might be home if you're kind of targeting a specific age group or something like that. But I think a lot of the rules don't apply anymore for times of day.
Yeah, I would say the one cardinal rule of any type of voter contact is between 9 and 9. Never before 9 or after 9 is always what I was told.
Ashley, a question for you. We're getting some questions about the limited number of phone numbers on VAN. Are you doing anything to add more phone numbers?
So the thing is that phone numbers are coming from when someone registers to vote. So when they register to vote, that's when they're putting their phone numbers in. So now, of course, likely like with me, the number I put in when I registered to vote is likely not the number I still have. And it's the same thing. And a lot of people have like, you know, changed from having a landline to their cell phone. So it really all depends on when the person registered to vote. And so it is difficult. I know it is difficult now. That is a complaint people have, but it's really kind of, I want to say, out of our hands in the sense that it's the information that folks provide to us when they register to vote. So if, you know, while you're talking to people, if you're getting updated information, that's how we're able to update it through all of your efforts too. So as people are signing up to volunteer or telling you this is the wrong number, this is how we're able to kind of update that info.
Also, is there, somewhat tied to this, is there a way to identify numbers of people who have not registered to vote, or would they just not have a number associated?
So someone who is not registered, yeah, they just wouldn't be on in the system.
Okay, great. Hester, question for you. Why did you decide to use minivan for phone calling versus open VPB or VPB? What were the pros and cons?
So we have both going on, kind of, again, depending on the ask, we use a different one. For these COVID check-ins where we're kind of just seeing how people are, we're not really making a specific ask of people, we just want to, you know, check in with folks. We wanted to use minivans so that somebody could see like, these are the 40 people closest to you right now, and be able to see them on the map and kind of have a more neighborhood feel connection, and theoretically actually be able to help the person that they're speaking to on the phone. If they spoke to like a healthcare worker 3 doors down and they wanted to like make some spare masks and drop them off, they could help that person because they know where they live. For things that are kind of less neighborhood specific, then we'll use OpenVPB because it's a little bit easier from, you know, the user experience. Minivan isn't really designed for phone calls, but we just wanted to use the mapping feature. And again, I like we wanted to be able to give people the people specifically closest to them that we can't necessarily do on OpenVPB, that we use for kind of more statewide lists. If it's just like, hey, you know, how are you doing, but less specific to a neighborhood, or kind of less, you know, less neighborhood feel.
Got it. Matt, a question for you. Are we still seeing in-person events, or has everything moved to virtual?
Great question. For now, I believe the majority, I mean, overwhelming majority, something like 95% of events on Mobilize. Emily, feel free to correct me because I grabbed that stat out of the air, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to accurate, are all virtual, online. In fact, if you go to mobilize.us right now, or join.mobilize.us, both our front-facing site and our volunteer site, you'll see that we are encouraging people to follow the recommendations based on health and government organizations in their area. And for most of the country right now, that is still practicing strict social distancing, et cetera. So part of this is our number one tip, probably should have been and certainly will remain: stay safe out there, right? Follow the best advice and best goals that you can. But you know, in terms of if people are hosting in-person events, we're not seeing that much. To the extent that we are, they're only things like drop off something, right? Like drop off food items for a food shelter, or things like that. But I think that that's the extent of it. I would say that most of folks are still staying all virtual right now.
Ashley, we have a question about the ability to edit emails and phone fields in OpenVPB. Will that ever be a capability? Oh, you're muted.
I can check, yeah. I can check and see if that's something that can be added on to, I guess, to the user interface. So I can definitely double check.
Great. You know, Ashley, a lot of these questions are how to set up various things. So I think we should also send out maybe like a help center at the end of this. Hester, have you done any fundraising work on predictive dialers for the candidate? Has it worked?
That's not something that we have volunteers doing. Some staff will make fundraising calls through dialers, but that's not something that we have volunteers doing right now. That's actually not something I've ever tried. So if other folks have done that, power to you. Right now we're trying to focus on, again, building relationships with people, and kind of checking in and seeing how they're doing at the moment.
Question from
hey, Emily, can I just add on for the question about the edit info? They are building it out, and it should be released mid-June. So for editing the email on OpenVPB.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question from Dana: relational organizing versus phone banking. Thoughts?
I say, why not both? I think, I think obviously the good thing about like more traditional phone banking is that the lists are pre-made. You can already have people reaching out who theoretically are registered to vote. But I think we are trying to get our volunteers to do, like at the beginning of a shift or at the end of a shift, think of people who they have in their network who may not be registered to vote. Maybe they've never been engaged with a campaign before, and using the personal relationship that they already have to try and get them to volunteer with us and do things with us. I think one of the reasons that we wanted to use Minivan for phone banking too is it kind of encourages relational organizing with people who are already in the voter file, because it's somebody that they could, if they keep reaching out to the person in their neighborhood, they can actually become friends with them. And then it is relational organizing as well. I think definitely try and do both. I don't think it's an either or, and just trying to figure out what are people more suited to. If somebody doesn't want to call people in their phone book, having a normal phone banking list is helpful as well, but trying to encourage everybody to do a bit of both.
Great. Hester, we also had a question about how to connect with volunteers one-on-one right now, especially if they are over the age of 60, don't like online events, don't pick up the phone. What have you experimented with?
So we found that people are pretty happy to pick up the phone right now. I think, as Matt said, people are kind of craving that human connection a little bit more. So we found that has been working okay for us. We do try and, you know, if we call somebody and they're like, oh, now's not a good time, we'll try and schedule a time to call them back and have that one-on-one. We've also had some volunteers writing letters and things like that to kind of give a personal touch. For people who have signed up to volunteer with us, we also let people like schedule themselves for a one-on-one. We know that a lot of people's normal work schedule is pretty weird right now. So that way they can find a time that works best for them, and then we can follow up with them.
Matt, this is a really important question for you. Someone wants to know what your dodo code is for Animal Crossing.
I'll follow up one-on-one because I don't want, I have very specific restrictions on who comes to my island in Animal Crossing.
Okay, another question for you, Matt, and maybe you, Hester. Are people donating right now? How do you hit your numbers? Matt, do you want to talk about our Act Blue interview?
Yeah. So a couple things. Specifically, this may segue into a point that I know Ashley and I both want to make, which is similar, which is Zoom integration with both of our tools, which is on the way. So we are thinking about this actively and developing it. So don't worry, that's on the way. But some things that already exist. Obviously, NGP 8 is a great finance tool and a powerhouse for that regard. From a Mobilize perspective, one thing that we offer is a free integration with tools like ActBlue. So a lot of people use ActBlue for fundraising and things like that. They're a great nonprofit organization that builds tools for that. And so we actually see that 17% of people who sign up for a Mobilize shift then donate through the link to ActBlue campaign. So that's equates to thousands of dollars that we've been able to raise for campaigns who are using. So if you have a Mobilize account, I highly, highly recommend it. You'll get plenty of insights into how to do that after the call. But yeah, so we are seeing people donate right now, is the short answer. I think that we're seeing more engagement than ever. Obviously, people in trying economic times like these are going to be more protective of their resources. But I would also push that now is the time where people are really putting their resources into campaigns and efforts that they care about. So I would, again, really push and encourage everyone to make sure that you are asking for the things that you need right now, whether it be for your campaign or for yourself personally. But it's a really good time, actually, particularly for small dollars, to raise those small dollars and really get people to engage with you on that ladder of engagement. I did see a question about, can we send the ladder of engagement out there? I'm sure there's a graphic somewhere. The ladder of engagement is just a concept, though. It's an organizing concept about, the lowest rung on that ladder is the easiest thing that you can ask somebody to do. And the highest rung is maybe the most difficult or challenging thing that you can ask somebody to do. So if you think about it, when's the last time somebody asked you for $5? Or when's the last time somebody asked you to, stand up for something that you believed in or signed a petition, right? And then how far between those 2 points would you rank that? That's where that is on the ladder of engagement. And Hester, of course, would love to hear your insights here.
Yeah, just quickly on the fundraising thing, Q1 was actually our strongest fundraising quarter to date for the campaign. And I think, as Matt said, it's because we've been investing in low dollar donors and building like a really strong grassroots foundation. And I think, as he was saying, again, like people are kind of, if they're able to, now's a time that is really motivating for a lot of people, especially in Texas. Like, instead of actually standing up for Texans to fight for stimulus packages and everything, John Cornyn's been going on TV and saying racist things, which I think is kind of allowing us to really make a strong point of, if you would like progress in Texas, MJ is the person that we need. So we've been really grateful for all of the grassroots donations that we've continued to receive. I think, again, on the ladder of engagement, as Matt said, it's just kind of thinking about like, what's the easiest thing, what's the next hardest thing, and kind of taking people up it. Thinking about like, if somebody has signed up on your website, what is the first ask that you're going to make of them? If it's to like sign up for a training, once they've done the training, are they going to do a phone banking shift? Once they've done one phone banking shift, can they commit to 2 a week? Once they're regularly making calls for you, could they help you do a training for somebody else, for a new volunteer? Once they've helped you with a training, could they lead their own training? And all of a sudden, you've kind of got somebody who is doing really incredible work for you all the time. So just trying to think, how do you kind of make it easy so that all of a sudden somebody is helping you run your program, even if they initially just, followed you on Twitter. So just thinking through, how do we get people to keep engaging with us? And every time we ask them to do something that's a little bit more challenging, so that we're escalating them.
Great. We are getting very close to time, and the vast majority of questions left are either about pricing for platforms or about specific features from NGP. So I will make sure our participants have these specific questions and that we send out the relevant Help Center articles. In the meantime, we wanted to reference these other resources. I can speak on Mobilize's behalf and then can hand it off. We have a COVID-19 resource center. You will see that NGP Van and MJ for Texas also have a resource center. So there are way more resources than you could ever use. Please check out all of them. They're really robust and really helpful. Mobilize is also offering free access to our core tier for any government entity or nonprofit doing COVID-19 relief work. And we are doing that through the end of next month. So I linked to the form on here where you can apply. Ashley, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So we do have our COVID resources also available, which has a lot of the webinars that we did last month for folks like trying to navigate all of this. So definitely check that out. I know there were some questions about how to use minivan and how to go about just using van. I think I just saw that on the chat. So we do also have a mini vanual and a vanual that you can definitely check out on our website as well. And then, yeah, any other questions, specific questions for like phone banks and Predictive Dialer and adding that on, definitely, Emily, let me know. Happy to connect folks with the right people.
Yeah, for us, we have a COVID resources page that's about helping folks in Texas get to the things that they need right now. And then we have our general kind of get involved organizing page with a bunch of different activities that you can do. Anybody who is in Texas on this call, I would really love to get in touch with you. I think my email's on the next slide. So once you've signed up on the website, if you also want to email me too, say, hey, I was part of this training, would love to talk about things in Texas. I am all ears for folks across the country. If you feel the same way that we do about getting John Cornyn out of office, we'd love your help too. As I said, phone banking and text banking can be done from anywhere. And if you have friends in Texas, send them our way as well. Thank you all so much for being here, though. Loved being part of this.
So on the next slide, we have contact information for our 3 amazing panelists. Feel free to reach out. I'm sure you'll also be receiving some follow-up emails. I know we will send out the recording as promised, and a couple other links that we mentioned. But thank you so much for attending. This was such an engaged audience, and we are so proud to support the work that you all are doing. Have a good rest of the week.